Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to have a look at a Forex example, in particular the euro against the US dollar. But before we start, we have to look at our risk disclaimer and just remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken. They're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. Put another way, all professional traders know and understand, but more importantly accept that losses can and will and do unfold. No matter what trading approach you take, there always will be losing trades. Right, let's come down to our standalone version, and actually I'll just change onto the euro chart here. You can see there's our scanner there, so I'll just change onto the euro chart. I'll just hide the scanner away so we've got a bit more space. Right, this is what I want to look at. I want to look at the euro US dollar, and in particular the rally we've had here over the last week. So I want to go back in time on our 4-hourly chart, because I want to show you using MTPredictor on multi-time frames, because this is basically what we do with MTPredictor. We understand that markets are, they go through cycles. They're basically random about half the time, when you can't do any kind of meaningful analysis, no matter what approach you take. But at other times the picture becomes a bit clearer. So I want to show you how we decide when the picture becomes clearer, and for this we use a multi-time frame approach. So for this I'm going to be looking at the shorter term trades on the hourly chart, but I'm going to be using the 4-hourly chart for our larger degree trend direction. So what do we do on this? Well, I'm just going to use our training mode to start with. I'm going to jump back to here for a while and have a look at how we do this. You can see the euro rallied up here, and we made a high here. So what we do now is we place our decision point levels on our higher time frame chart, which in this case is the 4-hourly chart, and for this we use the last pivot. You can see this is the last swing into the high, which is something I've been talking about in our training webinars. So I'll right mouse click here, do decision point, and can you see how that gave you a decision point or an area of support there on the chart, and see how it's there in advance. For you guys a bit more experience, if I do an Elliott wave intermediate up here, you can see this was actually a 5-wave sequence going to the high, and this was also the DP off the prior wave 4. So again, another supports at level. Just take that off so we don't confuse matters. So there's our decision point support level. So let's now, I'll just turn training mode off to show you what the market did, and on the 4-hourly chart you can see that it came down and then found support at this level. So what we do now is when we come down to the shorter time frame, which is the one you'll be looking for trades on, can you see how suddenly here the picture became a little bit clearer? Again, I'll use our training mode and jump back to around about here somewhere, and can you see how the picture became clearer in that it made that's our 240 minute or 4-hourly support, but can you see how here it came in and found support at this level? In other words, it made a meaningful reversal off the higher time frame support level. So now we're to gauge the large degree trend is up, but more importantly the picture has become clear. In other words, it's out of the random phase and it's now looking at a clearer picture where we can define the large degree trend a lot easier. So there's our support, the initial rally up, it then came down. You can see we had an automatic TS1 buy set up here. Our MTP trend had gone from red to black to now blue to indicate the large degree trend had reversed from down to up now. So if I right mouse click here, do the analysis, it then gave our position sizing, in this case less than 2% risk of a sample $20,000 account. But if you have a smaller account, you can then decide on how many lots to trade depending on what size account you have. You can change this as you wish. Right, so that gave you a potential entry level and a potential stop trigger and also a potential target. Now I'll talk about this target in a bit, because if I go forward you can see that you are not actually taken into the long trade. The market then came down to below the stop level first. Can you see that? Came down to the stop level, so therefore you'd have cancelled any orders because it wouldn't have been an executable trade. If we go forward, clear everything off. So even though there was a history triangle here, it wouldn't have been an executable trade because you weren't actually taken into a long trade to start with. We had another TS1 buy set up. So I'll right mouse click over the blue buy bar, do analysis, and here it gave you another potential long trade. Now here at the first target, it only gave a profit of 1.3R. Now normally we like for profits of nearer 2 to 1. So this is where a little bit of experience would come in, and again we'd go back to the larger degree chart to try and gauge a more meaningful target. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll just turn training mode off because we know it actually rallies up strongly. But if I go back to the 4-hourly chart, remember the analysis we were doing here? So I'll just again use the training mode to see what it looked like at the time. So this is when we were coming into the trades in around here. But this is what the 4-hourly chart would have looked like. So here we were coming down, we were coming into potential support here. So where would a more meaningful target have been on the higher time frame chart? Well, this is the last little swing. See this here? This is the last little swing into this low. So the first initial target would have been the DP off here. So that would have been out there in advance. Again, do you see how these are on the chart in advance before you get there? But would that have really been the best target to take? Well, if you remember, we had a 5-wave sequence going up into the prior high here, with the decline down into support from the DP from the prior wave 4. So typically what happens now is if we tend to get support at this level, the market tends to rally, but it tends to rally as a new uptrend. So where would that be? Well, at the very least, it should be a rally up into the DP off the start, or the end of the prior wave 5. In other words, up to here. So we right mouse click here and do decision point. So can you see what we're doing here is we are defining on the higher time frame chart support coming in at this low, which was the DP of this wave 4. If the market is going to rally up, then it's more than likely going to rally past this little minor support level, which is off that minor pivot high there, and more than likely to carry on up into the DP, at least the DP from the prior wave 5 high. In other words, the prior major high up here. If I turn training mode off, you can see that's exactly what it did and rallied up nicely. So what would that mean from you managing your trade on the hourly chart? Well, first and foremost, rather than looking to come out right the way down here at just a small 1.3R profit, at the very least, if I grab and drag this, you should be aiming for this first 4-hourly target there. Remember, that was the first one I put on. If you had have done that, then the profit would have been 5R, or approximately 5 times the initial risk, which would be very nice indeed. But if you'd been a bit more aggressive and gone for managing this by going to the higher time frame, sorry, the higher DP on the higher time frame, in other words, this DP target up here, if I grab and drag this, then the profit could have been a lot larger. It could have almost been potentially 14R. So this is what I want to show you about MTPredictor, is that we're not a black box system. We don't just have automatic setups where you blindly take these setups without any regard for what the large view trend is doing. I want to try and get you to think about what's going on in the markets. In other words, it's a toolbox. So what we were looking to do here was we were applying our tools to the large view chart. In other words, the 4-hourly chart here, where we knew we were at DP support from the the previous low, which was from there, which happened to be the wave 4 of a completed 5-wave sequence. We then were basically anticipating or projecting that if the market was going to rally, again at the time it would have been an if, because you never know for sure, but if the market was going to rally off this, then at the very least we should be getting up to this minor DP here, which was the DP off this small little swing down here, but more than likely it was going to carry on up to the DP here, which was off the last major pivot high, off that high there. So more than likely that's where it was going to go on the 4-hourly chart, i.e. the higher time frame chart. So that's why it made sense when you came in on the 1-hourly chart to not to look for the first projected target, which is only right the way down here, or even to look for this sort of small target here, which was about 5R, wasn't it? We can't do the mouse here, which is about 5R. But rather than looking to go there, we're projecting or anticipating it was going to go right up to the higher target, up to that level. And as you can see, that's exactly what it did, where a profit of approximately 14R, or 14 times the initial risk, was available. And this is what we're trying to do with MTPredictor. We're trying to uncover trade setups that when you're wrong, the losses are small. They're kept small at 1 risk unit, or 1R, but when the profits are large not just in dollars, but in risk units. In other words, in units relative to your initial risk. In this case, this would have been a profit of approximately 14 times greater than the initial risk, and that's what we're trying to do with MTPredictor. So hopefully this is a good video to show an example of how to apply MTPredictor on the Forex markets, with a great example catching the recent rally on the euro US dollar with a trade entry on the 1 hourly chart with the higher time frame analysis on the 4 hourly chart.